So I'll start recording now. So the ego can't be killed, right? And we're all terrified that our ego's going to die. Anybody terrified of that? Oh, my precious ego. Oh, my precious delusions are so brilliant, aren't they? No. They're really not. Just to me. So, to be free from our attachments and our allergies, this is the only water that will quench your thirst, along with the super secret ingredient. What you have to let go of is a perceptual illusion of self. This illusion, not a delusion. This is an illusion. It seems like it's true. It's not true. You have to deepen your insight by deepening your practice, by disciplining yourself and finding whatever trick your ego needs to get your fucking butt on the cushion. In spite of all your bullshit excuses. I've heard them all. In fact, I've used them all. It's amazing how uncreative we actually are when it comes to making up excuses. So when you let go of your attachments and your addictions to all that your ego is clinging to and pushing away, you're free. And when you see through the perceptual illusion that I'm here and you're there, this is just an illusion. When you actually look out from suchness, not from an ego view or a sense of self, when you see the emptiness of things and the emptiness of thoughts and feelings and the emptiness of self, then there's one more step. You have to see the emptiness of emptiness. And then you're finally empty. Empty enough that the accident could happen and the sacred candle is lit. And this is just a story. Don't believe it. It's just a goik. A story of goiks. But there is some truth to it. Until you see for yourself what this truth is, assume it's true and follow your gut knowing all the way. And take no prisoners, accept no excuses. Like your very life and aliveness and the aliveness of everyone that you love depends on it. Because it does. Does anybody have any questions?
What have you been drinking?
Cranberry juice. And seltzer water. It's really good stuff.
Cheers.
You want some? I'm just getting ready for Bogota. Bogota, Colombia.
Doshin, you've totally thrown me.
Really?
I'm obviously completely deluded. Because I thought it was perceptual delusion of self.
No.
Perpetual delusion of ego.
It's perpetual delusion of ego. and perceptual illusion of self.
Okay.
And it took me about a month to get that straight.
I've obviously gone completely round the wrong way.
Me too. I did the same thing. But I believe I have it now. You know, that articulation is just so succinct. It just brought me to my knees. You know, it arises out of the Wilber-Combs lattice, which, you know, really is Wilber's way of acknowledging the doctrine of two truths that's been around forever in Buddhism. And I always knew that the ego was structural. You know, this is just structure. And I knew that self, once we got rid of this notion of self, once we saw the emptiness of self, you know, this is awakening. But Daicho really articulating it in this crystal clear, succinct pointing out instruction is just so powerful. It's the ego is nothing but conditioning, just karmic patterns of conditioning. You know, conditioning of our parents, our culture, all the cultures that we encountered, our own volition, you know, what little choice we have contributes to our perpetual conditioning. So that all of this conditioning, all of our thoughts and feelings are delusions. They're not real. They're empty of self-nature. They're just like smoke across the sky. And the sense of self, you know, all of the objects of our experience, all five senses and all thoughts and feelings of the sixth sense, they arise and they disappear, leaving no trace. What strings them together is this sense of self, which is actually the seventh consciousness. This sense of meanness, which it you know, this illusion, we need this illusion to survive. But as we deepen our practice and we deepen our insight, it is possible to see that what we needed to survive all these years isn't true. It's an illusion. It's like a mirage. And that articulation is just so clear and hard to remember.
Not so mine.
At least I'll speak for myself. It was for me. It took me about a month. I kept fucking it up. So keep at it, Daiki. You're on the right track. You're doing it perfectly. Leave yourself alone. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
You had a question?
No. Conception, that's what I had.
Yes, I know. Anybody else have a question? Or want to share something? Something special that will really benefit all beings, especially all of us. Don't be bashful. Don't be shy. Or be as shy as you want to. Just speak up. Good stuff.
I've got one if anyone else will come forward.
Well, even if someone else will come forward, let's hear yours.
So if you have a moment where you get angry with someone, you assert yourself, are you asserting your ego or yourself?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I'll speak a bit louder. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So if in a moment where you're angry and you say something to somebody, you have an awareness of yourself, a perpetual illusion. You have an awareness of this illusion, but in a moment you forget yourself and you get cross.
Mm-hmm.
Are you asserting your ego or are you asserting yourself, knowing that the self in that moment is an illusion?
Yeah. So you're asserting both. You're not free from the illusion of self.
Hmm.
And your ego conditioning, all your anger is ego conditioning. And it needs to be not suppressed. This is the biggest problem. Buddhism coming to the West is we think that we can suppress our anger and be free of it. We can't. We must learn to regulate our anger and transmute it into absolute clarity. We must practice being virtuous and not suppressing our negative emotions. We must deepen our insight to the point that we can transmute them. And then you'll be free from the egoic delusions, at least temporarily. But the problem of seeing through the illusion of self, both of these things take time and great discipline and effort. And it's tricky, tricky, tricky. This is why we need Buddha. We need to taste the deepest truth of who we are and practice staying and stabilizing this mind. We need Sangha. We need like-minded people to inspire us and to help us when we get weak and confused. We need the Dharma. We need the teachings. And we need to work with teachers that are selflessly sharing the Dharma. Because it is not easy. It is very simple. When I think back about the most important thing in my own practice to develop whatever insight I have, the most important thing was the transmission and the deep contact with my root teacher, Jumbo. And I'm forever indebted to him for the countless, timeless hours he spent with me. So, anything else?
That's great. Thank you.
Swaha.
Yeah, can I say something?
No.
Hello. So,
Come on, where's the fuck you?
yeah, I haven't been here long enough yet. It could come.
Oh, it's okay. It's
Give it
okay.
half an hour, you know. And
This is Renzai Zen. We don't care.
Yeah, but I'm conditioned, don't I? You know, I need a bit of time to sink in. I'm in polite England.
Oh, I know. Isn't that sad? You're so polite in UK. You Brits are so polite.
Yeah, so but what you just said about the Dharma and kind of just checking in right now is I feel kind of like I'm back on it. Like it's like, you know, I was off for a couple of days, you know, a little cold, little like that kind of talked me out of it. But then came back in. But there's something about that's kind of quite boosting about just this now.
Yes.
That's what I noticed. And I was kind of thinking earlier on I was in some trouble with the Zoom and the mic. And I was thinking, I hope I don't miss this, you know, and everything. So, but just to connect is I feel it. Yeah, it's great.
Wonderful. You know, this is why we do this. Because we go on retreat, we get fired, we come back inspired as hell, and then it fades. So when it fades, come back to another retreat. That's why we do retreats. It takes a few, doesn't it, Daiki? Doesn't it, Dokkan? It takes a few. We lost Dokkan. Oh, my goodness. So that's why we do this. We schedule a couple Roshi calls, and if I don't do anything but just turn up the heat a little bit and remind you what it was like on a retreat, that's my intention. To transmit this mind again so that you feel the fire, and then come back to another retreat. How many retreats did it take you, Daiki, before it started settling in?
Probably about 10.
That's been my experience. It takes 10 just to have a clue what we're talking about. And then after that, I'm not going to tell you how many retreats I've been to. It's embarrassing. Let's just say I counted 100.
Even it's time to feel, and he can disappear because of the time. But time is illusion also for the ego needs time. So
when we play the Han, Jarek, what the Han symbolizes is there's a bang, bang, 7 loud bangs to symbolize the timelessness that never changes. Then a soft, and then a progression. Bang, 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 into the running of time. You know, this is the two truths. There is an absolute timelessness, and there is a relative sense of time. The clock is ticking. My body is growing old and will soon die. Both are true. Both are just so true. This is what the Han means when we play it, to remind us of the two truths, the relative time and the absolute timelessness. Yes?
you know, I think we create our reality. Each mind can like create their own environment, their own stuff in life.
That is
we
one
do
view.
this. Yeah,
That is
yeah,
a
of course.
relative
Of course, one perspective, yes, and think we each body mind influence another.
So
and
you express that view. Can you hold the absolute view? What would the
yes, I
absolute
can hold.
be?
It's empty. It just is.
There is. It's all delusion,
Yes.
and both are true. And we can't say that one is true and one is not true. We can't say both are true. We can't say both aren't true. The minute we open our mouth, we're lying.
Yes. So
Not
so
enough.
Yes, that's true.
Poetry is the closest we can come.
Yes.
The empty boat is flooded with moonlight. Oh.
Beautiful said.
Yes. Wonderful. Jadek, thank you. Angus, did you get your question answered?
Yeah. It wasn't a question really, but it was nice.
There was a question underneath it.
Yeah. I guess. Yeah. Okay.
Did that one get answered?
Yeah. All right. Okay.
The answers come back to more retreats.
Yeah. Right.
As many as you need.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm signed up for this up in Scotland. I forget what it's. Findhorn.
Findhorn. Oh, wonderful. That'll be fun.
I'll see you in person in November.
Swaha.
You recommend any good poets?
Oh, God. Do I recommend any good poets? Yes.
I do.
Yeah. The
Małgosia, please tell us what poets you recommend.
Oh, it's an American homeless person. His name is Moondog.
Moondog.
A snowflake settled on my palm and said, as if in fear, I have to be on my way before I turn into a tear. One I remember.
Yeah. Dog.
This is a book that is a wonderful book of sacred poetry. It's an anthology of many poems from many different poets. It's Stephen Mitchell, who is a Zen student, the same school as the Warsaw Zen Center, the Quantum School of Zen. He studied with Seng San, and he's married to Byron Katie. He's an incredible, gifted writer. So he's translated a lot of these poems, and we used to get one of these books out every retreat you'd come to in the early days of Hollow Bones. But it's just a wonderful book of sacred poetry trying to talk about nothing, words that can't be spoken. And there's a companion called The Enlightened Mind, which is full of prose. And it's all just really beautiful. And really a lot of poets, you know, from the Persians, Hafiz and
Rumi.
Rumi.
Thank you. That's what I was thinking. Who read my mind, saw the blank, and filled it in.
Kabir.
So that's a wonderful place to start, and the books really grow on you. A lot of the poetry in the Mondo Zen manual came out of that. When I first started working with Junpo, he was trying to trick me into starting a meditation group. A lot like you're doing, Nina, so great job. And the way he did it, he knew I loved poetry. So he said, why don't you start a group where you meditate and then you read sacred poems? And then you meditate some more. And it was awesome. It really was awesome. And it was out of the poems that I collected in that group that I started in the Episcopal Church in collusion with the choir director who also loved poetry. Many of those poems ended up in the Mondo Zen manual that came out of that group that started. And it was just a wonderful way to, you know, to first sit and then read a poem very slowly 3 times, a short poem, and then sit again. And then we did Qigong or some physical movement. And then we did a check-in at the end, and you could share any insights that you had. And it was just such a touching thing to do. I would recommend it for anybody that likes poetry. It gave it an embodiedness that was delicious. And tricked my ego into keeping meditating.
I know someone else that's written a few good poems of their own, Roshi.
You do?
Yeah, you. When are you going to finish yours?
Yeah,
No,
I'm waiting to write a good one. Only need one. I've written quite a few poems, and I'm quite attached to them, some of them. But I still don't really think that it's like, who is it that said they were sitting a lot, but they were waiting to meditate? That was you. Was that you, Marta? Where are you? Yeah, my poetry's like that. I've written a lot of stuff, but I'm waiting to write the one real poem. But thank you for the compliment. I'll accept it. Now that I've...
Doshin, I have a question.
Yes.
You were mentioning about Junpo and your the transmission and your contact. And my question is, were there signs of when you felt, or maybe were explained or told, that you were self-generating in a way? In other words, when you could do the work without so much contact. And the context for me is self-retreat after the group retreat. Two really wonderful experiences. One, just thank you all so much for the contact and everybody's vulnerability. When I went on self-retreat, I found I had to dig really deep at times for resources. And that was helpful, but it certainly seems like having the contact helped me stay vulnerable more consistently. And yet it seems sometimes you need to be with yourself more to recognize that you have the resources.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know that me telling you what my story would be helpful to you.
I was wondering about that.
I'll be happy to do that, but I think you're unique enough that it's more important to work with somebody that has a little insight and really focus on what your story and your truth is and following your gut knowing. That seems to be more important. And I will say that both are important. You know, you can't do the cleaning up work without people. You got to rub against others. You can't do the waking up without being completely isolated. And we have to do both. We have to cut through the delusions that we're attached to and we're pushing away. And we have to see through the illusion of self. To see through the illusion of self requires a lot of solitary time and really building the fucking fire in your hara. However you do it.
Yeah.
I have to build the fucking fire. You may not. But I think you probably do.
A few sparks in there.
And then the rubbing against others to see where you're still grabbing and pushing away. And you're still deluded and believing your delusions. And worse yet, you're acting on your delusions. And they're having an impact that you're not seeing. This requires working with others and coming to retreats. You get a little bit of both. So you need it all, James.
Yeah. Sometimes I wonder whether I should be reaching out, and other times, even when I was on self-retreat, and yet. Yeah.
If you wonder if you should be reaching out, you should be.
Okay.
If you wonder if you should be alone, you should be. Assume you're doing it correctly and then do it. Great question for you. Very pertinent.
Yes.
And timely. Swaha. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Really?
Yes.
How excellent.
I would actually like you, if you could elaborate on the difference or the tension between the relation between discipline and leaving yourself alone.
Oh, isn't that a great question?
Because I am like noticing a lot of things about myself all the time, tensions and thoughts and posture and controlling myself, but I know I have to leave myself alone. So when should I leave myself alone? When should I?
Oh, that's such a great question. This is where the guided meditation that Daicho has brought into our Sangha is just bloody brilliant. Now, what I've noticed with many people that are younger than I am, you know, this is a generation thing, is if you were raised in a more traditional religious environment that had the religious family values, and you were indoctrinated into that cultural system at age 5 or 6, you learned to cultivate discipline. It was part of the indoctrination. If you were indoctrinated into a family that didn't have those deep religious family values, discipline wasn't as important unless you were an athlete. And then it was important. Or a student and really driven to be successful. But the problem with that kind of discipline, so if your parents were more scientific, more rational, they were really interested in you achieving. So what happens with that achievement is you develop some discipline, but a lot of resentment about having to be disciplined. And you also develop a view automatically that you can never achieve what your parents want you to achieve. Their expectations are impossible to achieve. So this little voice in the back of your head starts chirping, and it says, you're not good enough. You'll never be good enough. You'll never do it right. So this really happens with the generation before mine or after mine. It begins and it gets worse. So when to really double down and exert more effort. This is gross efforting, trying harder, volition, knowing when to do that, and it will be useful. And then knowing when to do gross non-effort, which is relaxing. You know, relaxing that disciplinarian that's beating you with a whip. This is really important. It's really critical, and it's different. And it really depends on your own indoctrination. What was the culture you were indoctrinated into? Did you learn healthy discipline, or did you learn discipline with resentment and a big inner critic that's telling yourself that you're worthless? If that's the case, which it is for most people that are alive today, I'd say probably 60% in the modern world. I'm not talking about the second or the third world. I'm talking about the first world, the world that we're all living in. This is where the subtle doing comes in, and the subtle non-doing. The subtle doing is all this inner dialogue that's going on in your head all the time. I should be disciplined. I suck. I'm not disciplined enough. I need to be more disciplined. You'll never be disciplined enough. All this inner voices going on in our head. This is where the subtle non-doing comes in. Just assume you're doing it correctly and leave yourself alone. And allow all that conversation into your meditation without allowing it to disturb anything. It's just the natural development of your conditioning. It's all there and needs to be there. It's there for a reason. The only problem is you're allowing it to disrupt what else is there, which is this meditative mind. Leave yourself alone. Assume you're doing it correctly the only way you can. These are brilliant meditation instructions that speak right to the heart of the millennials that I couldn't ever see because I'm not a millennial. And Daicho sees it and went to the heart of it, and it worked for him. He's awakened faster than anybody I've ever seen. And he's sharing it with all of us. Wonderful. Brilliant. Thank you. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Any more questions after that?
No, I will Let it sink in.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Just assume you're doing it correctly, because you are. You're doing it the only way you can do it. And go from gross effort to gross non-effort to subtle effort to subtle non-effort to no effort. And when you're truly resting without trying to change anything, and things are just flowing in harmony with nature, nothing's going against any grains, everything's flowing with the stream of life, you'll be awake. Don't settle for anything less. And that's not enough. You need to do all the shadow work. Swaha.
Wow.
Daiki.
I don't know if it's helpful, but as someone who is totally been through this of having my huge inner critic and not being good enough, and Doshin knows my story, knows my history here, you have to befriend that inner critic. You cannot beat it. You need to really understand why it's there and make friends with it, which again goes back to the leave yourself alone thing. But these instructions of Daicho, they're just magical that really work in that aspect. But it's been really useful for me to really work on that inner critic stuff.
Swaha.
Two-pronged approach, the meditation and for me it was voice dialogue, but it can be anything like
Swaha.
shadow work, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Daiki.
Roshi, can I say something?
Of course.
So I have some thoughts to the lady, which Daika. What was her name? Daika. Daiki. Okay. So Daiki said about her inner critic, and I can say from my experience, when in our the story about us, so in body mind, they in the past it could create some trauma experience, some difficult experience, and we are afraid about our living. So the critic, the function of critic is to protect us from the death. So because he believed that when we will be somebody, we will be good, we will be enough, good for love. So this is the function of critic. You need to see, I think, you need to see that the function is you want to live, and you need to relax, and you need you are safe. You don't need all these methods because it's the old way, which you believe is good for you, but it's not necessarily true. So just be patient with this part of you, and integrate and love this part. So I think it can help you.
So I want to appreciate something that you brought up, Jadek. These parts of us all showed up for a reason. And as you said, Jadek, they showed up to protect us. And this is so important. And as you said, Daiki, you had to learn to go make friends with that part of yourself. As you said, Jadek, you have to learn to love it. All of that is true. All of that is true. And it's really important. What showed up to protect us at a certain age starts to undermine us as we get older. It starts becoming a problem that we then resent and fight. And we must go back to the roots and appreciate why it showed up in our lives and how it served us and how it saved our lives. And once we've done that, then we can learn to appreciate it and love it and finally integrate it and give it a new job description. It's a very valuable part of us. So thank you both. That's really important. And I didn't quite cover what you brought forth, so I want to appreciate it. Jacob, did you hear that?
Yes.
Did
Thank
that
you.
resonate as well?
That was very helpful. Be a friend with your inner critic. Yeah.
Yes.
I'll take that with me.
Swaha.
So,
Anybody else?
May I have a question also?
Yes, please.
Jarek mentioned the feeling of being safe,
Yes.
that you're safe. Is this something that we should gradually learn to let go also?
Oh, that's a really good question. And the answer to that question is it depends. So I'll give you two instances where safety is very different. Now, in America and Western Europe, the pluralistic culture of, in America, it's the liberal culture. They are addicted. They've gone way too far with safe. They've been accused of worshiping at the altar of safetyism. It's become an ideology. Everybody has to be safe. Now, that is going too far. What's important is in attachment theory, when we really look at the development of the infant, the very first milestone is safety. And looking back at those early years, you can ask yourself the question, as an infant, were you safe? When I ask myself that question, the answer is no, I wasn't safe. And people that didn't get that box checked will wrestle with being safe the rest of their lives. And if you don't feel safe, nothing is going to happen. Now that's foundational. So that kind of safety is really important. And culturally, it can be exaggerated to the extreme where it becomes a barrier. It becomes a barrier that prevents you from growing, from learning, from awakening. It leaves you stuck in an addiction to being safe, which means you can't take any risks. You can't learn. So safety, basic fundamental safety is really important. But taken to extreme, especially with a collective belief system, like we see in America and we see in Western Europe, is become crippling. Stephen Levine, who was a Buddhist teacher who did a lot of work with death and dying, he just recently died a few years ago. In America, he worked particularly with prisoners who were on death row, who were convicted of violent crimes and sentenced to death, and they were awaiting their execution. He said something that a quote that I use all the time. He said, safety is the most unsafe spiritual path that you can take. It leaves you frozen in fear, unable to take risks, unable to learn, unable to grow. This can be true if taken too far. But also, if you don't feel safe, if you don't repair that little infant that never felt safe, if you don't repair and do something psychologically to make yourself feel safe as you can, then you'll never learn anything either, because you'll never be safe. You'll always be looking out for where the tigers are that are going to eat you. So this is a really interesting question that you raise. And the answer is it depends. It depends on the wisdom to know which kind of safety we're talking about. Is that helpful? Wonderful. It's a great question. That's a very important question that we all must wrestle with as we're growing up and waking up. It's a fundamental question, and it keeps showing up again and again. So thank you for asking it. Anybody else? Yes. Yes.
I have a question about the self-motivation thing. And somebody here, I think it was Boss, he said you walk. Is there any other tricks you could do, like walking, meditation, swimming? Somebody said swimming. Is there any other useful tips you have I could maybe try out?
Well, there's many forms of meditation. Boz has been doing a really disciplined walking meditation for years. That is a practice that served him very well. So my encouragement to him is to encourage it. I mean, to continue it. It served him well. And to supplement it with sitting meditation. And just pay attention to what happens. So for you, Gosha, I would say that do as much sitting meditation as you can, and then do something that's really embodied, where you can really move into the presence of mind, just like we were talking to Jodic and to Keeson, that they were so in their heads that they needed to do something to be present in their senses, especially their kinesthetic bodily sense, their somatic sense. But for you, Gosha, I would say that something like yoga done with a real intense meditative intention to be completely present and to cultivate that presence would do a lot to supplement your sitting meditation. Mm-hmm. And it would open a door and make it more pleasurable for you and more accessible for you.
Okay, thank you. I'll try it. Thanks.
Mindful walking, just walking, being in your senses. If I'm really mindful of the objects coming into my senses in this moment, and I'm not in my head thinking about them, but I'm actually experiencing the sensual objects we can only experience in real time. The minute we start thinking about them, then we've left our five senses and we've gone into our heads. So even walking meditation in a beautiful natural environment where you're really setting the intention and focusing on being completely present with your five senses, that would be a great exercise for you. Okay. To supplement your sitting, not to replace it.
No. Thank you.
Swaha. Anything else? So let's do a nice check-in and let's share what insight has arisen for us or crystallized for us on this call. What are you leaving the call with that is useful and might be useful to others? Michael, would you start us off again? You're muted, Michael. There you go.
But I have a microphone. I'm going to try and use this. No, okay. I'll just speak. So it's interesting to listen to other people and to see how they're getting on with the meditation side of things. And so it's maybe not so easy sometimes. From my mind, some things your comments then upon the alternative forms of meditation, the swimming, I run. That's maybe something I can focus more on when I'm running. Is my state of mind then. There are questions that are coming up which I need to dwell on a little. One of them is, it keeps on coming up, is the context of creativity in meditation. But so I can't really formulate a question as yet with that, but it keeps on coming up.
Let me give you a question to sit with about creativity. Where does creativity come from? Don't think about it. Sit with it and watch. When creativity arises, where does it arise from?
Sure.
This is a koan for you.
Another one.
Another one.
Thank you.
I haven't gotten a report on the last one yet. I'm waiting.
So I can maybe say something on that at some point in the near future.
Okay. Anything else?
I think for now that's good. Thanks.
Wonderful. Swaha.
Swaha.
Lekaya.
Yes. So one of the things that I think will resonate for further practice was, I think you said to just stay in the body during the meditation. This is definitely something that I will intend. And also your answer to the question I asked, and also that kind of resonates very well with many other questions that appeared earlier. So I think this is something to take further during the practice. So
Swaha. You're in. Gosia.
Well, I'm thinking about this self-motivation and self-discipline. I'll meditate on it. How to, I don't know, trick myself into it, or maybe I should just do it for a month and then let just my body remember. I don't know, maybe my body doesn't remember how to sit still for a longer period of time. So
our bodies love to sit. It's our egos that don't.
Oh.
It's not a body problem. It's an ego problem.
Yeah, you think?
Whatever story you tell yourself.
You think so?
That's
I'm not sure.
Through 1,000 cases of working with people. Never found an exception to that yet. Keep looking.
Okay. I think you're right. I was just about to say something about my body. I have a really strong pulse. Like, it's really fast. It makes me really like run. But I think it is in my mind, actually. The pulse is the second thing. My mind is first. And that's why I'm so fast with things. So it's really nice to see you again. And I wanted to say that it's really nice. Thank you, Nina and Zahare, for having the Sunday sittings and the breakfast afterwards. That's really helpful. And I hope to see you soon again.
Swaha. Jacob.
I now realize that there's a connection between being safe and leaving myself alone. So if I feel safe, I can leave myself alone easier.
Oh, that's a deep insight for you. Sit with that a little more. That's deep. Goes all the way to the core.
I'm in.
Swaha. Baz.
Hi, thanks very much. My thoughts at the end were that I've found over the past 20 years or so it quite difficult to create a rhythm. And I've had times of being very erratic with practice. But I've also been very dedicated, so it was more like 4 hours one day and nothing the next day. And I have 4 children and a busy work life and many responsibilities. And nowadays I have a strong rhythm.
Mm.
I would, in the lunch break I have at work, I have an hour, so I don't eat lunch. I just sit, because you don't need 3 meals a day. So I think it's also about making choices. But this question of should I do it, shouldn't I do it, and the kind of self-discipline, if there's a rhythm, then you just do it and you don't have to think. So I found that this rhythm has been incredibly helpful, and to be really schedule my days. The only other thing that's left in my mind is just to say I'm going to write this retreat report. I haven't had a moment, but expect it.
Swaha.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Daiki.
Yeah, I just want to say, Boz, your picture here, you look like an illuminated being with that sunlight. It's fantastic. And you are a real inspiration. Thank you for that. And thank you, all of you. I've really enjoyed being on the call. No matter how many times I hear some of this stuff, I just need to hear it over and over again, it seems. So, I mean, I am going to get this into my head. I have written it down now. Perceptual illusion of self and perpetual delusion of ego. And I will sit with that. And I'm in. Thank you.
Be careful, it's dangerous saying.
I know.
And thank you, Daiki, for all that you shared today. It was delicious. Keep up the good work.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Swaha. James.
Hi. Well, it's been a pleasure to be here with everyone, and especially meeting folks from Poland for the first time. It's really wonderful to see you and to know you guys are all practicing there. For me, I'm a little miffed because the question I had, you didn't give me the answer in the way I wanted it. Because I wanted I know I could see something that wants some launch pad of clarity. And I got a moment of just not knowing who you are versus who I think you should be or are, and then the answer to my question remains completely uncertain in every moment.
What an insight.
Yeah. And darn, I want that certainty I can walk away with.
Who wants the certainty?
Good question.
I'll look forward to the answer to it.
Doesn't seem that the one who wants the answer doesn't seem to have my best interest at heart.
Interesting.
I'm in.
Swaha. Angus.
Yeah, I feel very connected and calm right now. Yeah. It's kind of early days for me with this. I feel like maybe half a boat has been burnt down. Do you see what I mean? So I've got some hope.
Oh,
You know,
dangerous.
well, you know. Okay, yeah, I see why it is. Yeah, sure, because that's been around before, right? So I get that. Yeah. Yeah, it's like the other side of the coin is fear, and then there's hope, right? So,
Just like that.
So, yeah. So I know myself quite well. So I think I'm doing all right. I feel like I'm doing all right.
You doing it perfectly?
Yeah, perfect,
Wow.
imperfect. Perfect, imperfect. Yeah. It was something you said about the solitude, which I think there's so much about where we're encouraged to be in connection, you know, all the time, you know. So sometimes when I'm aware of my isolation, that can get me down. Where I don't feel I got to go out and connect. I got to go and do this and connect with people. And you know, and I don't have to do that. That doesn't have to happen. And I could use it to my advantage in a sense, and get more connected with myself, and just be courageous with what comes up and sit with it, and yeah, have a kind of warrior spirit to working with this, as you know. So yeah, that's especially what I'll take from this. And it's been really nice to hook up here with everybody and have this experience on Zoom, which didn't look like it was going to turn out well for me at the beginning, but it has. So that's great. And I'm in.
Wow. Jadick.
So I should something to say something. I just want to express gratitude for you all. It was really calming experience to join to the Zoom experience with Doshin. I can feel like the love which we can create and share to one another. So this is the peace and the love. So I'm just grateful. I don't want to like create some mind story. I just want to like be in my body and yeah. I'm very grateful. And I have this night good sleep also. But yes, so I wish you all like fantastic experiences, but not just like to be happy, you know, to find the happiness within you. Because Doshin said this creativity, all things, when we like with ourselves, just we are. So this all the beautiful things comes just from us. We don't need to think about this, because you know before I was like I have to thought what I should say when will be my turn, but it was fuck it. When it started, I like trust. I will know what I say. I trust that the answer like come. So yes. So we just need to like be spontaneous with this what is in this moment, because I think our mind don't believe that we can like survive. We need to like all the time plan. You can plan, you can be organized but this can come from love, from understanding, not from being afraid of survival. Because you know we are so intelligent, body, mind. All we know what to do just just because you don't need to like, don't be, yes. Tak, jak. Wiesz co, bo tu mam ucznia, okay, English, sorry, I use Polish because, wiesz co, ja pójdę sobie piechotą, już kończymy, wiesz? Okay, yeah, take care, guys. I just now want to thanks again to Doshin. He's a beautiful man, and I'm very grateful to him.
Swaha.
Swaha.
So, Keeson, you want to check in?
She's written on the chat. Oh, she's there. It's fine.
You're muted, Keeson.
I have to leave for a doctor's appointment, so I'd written a note, but I'm just so glad that I made it to this meeting, and I'm sorry to be late and leaving early, but to meet all of you today has been just such a beautiful experience, and I hope to meet up with you at a retreat sometime. But what a miracle it is to be able to connect and to also be so inspired. I mean, Boz, you're really inspiring to me. I will, the discipline part of my practice is one of my failings, but I have a lot of strengths, and so I do feel okay with where I am, and also really not hopeful. Just much more aware than ever of what's going on. And Daiki, it's really wonderful to see you, and James and Angus and the people who are on the retreat in England, and Doshin. I'm really just, thank you so much for being who you are and for giving yourself so faithfully to us. Thank you. So I have to run. I'm so sorry.
So don't be sorry, just run. Swaha. Marta.
So I have several thoughts and several emotions going on, which is actually a perfect illustration of one of the insights that I take with myself from this call, and it is that it's both. There is no time, and yet there is the sense of time. The safetyness is, our security is necessary, but it's also, it has to be monitored. And yeah, so that it's both leaving yourself the fuck alone and discipline. And this is one of the insights, and the other one is the importance of Sangha for me, because I can feel this. I'm leaving the call with the same, in the same state, or somewhat, that I was leaving the retreat in, let's say, and it is the feeling of being connected, being interconnected with other people, but in a way in the world. And I do repeat it to myself every day that we are all interconnected, and I quote Pocahontas to myself, but actually now I'm feeling it. So I want to thank everybody, specifically Doshin, but also everybody else for being there and sharing, because it's amazing that we are connected, even though some of you I haven't seen. So you may be just made up people, or we may not be people. You may just be, you're just in my phone, but I am feeling that you're people. So thank you for sharing your time with me. So yeah, I'm in.
Swaha. Nice insights, Marta. Middle way. Wonderful description of the middle way. Nina.
I want to thank all of you for all your thoughts and the emotions, and also I feel very connected. I have a battle in my head with my inner critic that I'm not really doing enough, that I'm not changing my life enough, and that and I need to change it if I really want to be really, really serious, but maybe not, because there are other parts of my life that are also important. So yeah, it's going on in my head. I guess I just need to accept it, that it's just imperfect, and I will keep trying. And
Assume you're doing it correctly, Nina, and leave yourself alone and enjoy it. All of it.
will.
Swaha.
Okay, I'm gonna use this possibility to also share an insight. It was I wanted to thank Daiki for the idea to befriend the inner critic, which seems something insightful for me. And one more thing is that Dashin, when you said when you mentioned the special role that poetry can play. I think there is a book that has been waiting for a few weeks on my desk, the poetry book, and I'm gonna look into it finally this evening. So it's the right moment. Thank you. Thank you all. Amen.
Swaha. And Doshin, I'm just absolutely delighted to see you all practicing. It's the most important thing that you can do for yourself and everyone that you love. And just never give it up. Just turn up the heat, turn up the fire, and come back and sit by the burning log whenever you need to. Till you catch fire, James. And when you catch fire, there will be no doubt in your mind. Deepest gratitude, and I'm internally in. Keep up your good work. Assume you're doing it correctly and leave yourself the fuck alone.
Waha. Thank you, Doshin.
Wow.
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 Swaha.
Waha.
Look.